A photograph, grainy and blurred, surfaces from a forgotten archive. A group of German officers, faces taut with disbelief, staring at a crudely scrawled report. The document, dated August 1943, states plainly, prisoners under German custody were fed meat 3 times a week. The impossible contrast strikes immediately. In a war defined by rationing and scarcity, where frontline soldiers scrambled for scraps, camp inmates were receiving protein-rich meals with alarming regularity. The faint crackle of a broken radio intercept plays beneath the image, fragmented voices hinting at confusion within the ranks. How could this anomaly exist under the strict watch of the Wehrmacht? Why did the officers' hardened discipline shatter at the revelation, as if confronted by a hidden betrayal within their own system? Tracing this paradox back, the origins emerge in a convoluted tangle of military bureaucracy and conflicting priorities. By early 1942, as the Eastern Front stretched German supply lines thin, a directive from the Logistics Command mandated improved rations for certain prisoner groups, ostensibly to maintain labor productivity in critical war industries. A folded, yellowed requisition slip reveals the coded language: special meat allocations earmarked for prisoners classified as essential workers. This was no act of compassion, but a cold calculation. Yet the clash between ideology and pragmatism brewed beneath the surface. Officers devoted to ideological purity struggled against commanders focused on operational efficiency. Which faction held sway? And how deeply did these rationing decisions ripple through the hidden gears of the war machine? The core of this rationing anomaly lay in the camp system's shadow economy and its intersection with military logistics. According to supply manifests and ration tables recovered from the archives, prisoners in select camps received meat, often pork or beef, 3 times weekly, while frontline troops frequently subsisted on less. These rations averaged 300 grams per prisoner per meal, a figure that dwarfed known allowances elsewhere. The meat was sourced not from standard military supply channels, but diverted from requisitions meant for rear area units or taken from clandestine local markets under guard supervision. This logistical sleight of hand required coordination across multiple departments, from quartermasters to camp administrators. Yet the system's fragility was evident: sporadic shortages, inconsistent delivery, and whispers of corruption. How was such a system sustained without detection? Did these meat distributions mask a broader network of illicit exchanges? The first official test of this rationing strategy came in late 1942, when a squadron commander reported unusually high labor output from a camp near Smolensk. The prisoners, he noted, appeared healthier and more resilient than anticipated under harsh conditions. Field reports highlighted improved endurance during forced marches and reduced sickness rates, metrics atypical for such environments. Yet alongside the positive notes, a growing unease surfaced. Officers accustomed to viewing prisoners as expendable resources questioned the source of this vitality. Intercepted communications hint at growing internal debates. Was this enhanced nutrition undermining the ideological narrative? The difference between expectation and reality gnawed at command structures. Could such an improvement be sustained without undermining the broader war effort? Enemy forces reacted swiftly once intelligence surfaced about these irregular feeding practices. Soviet partisan reports, intercepted and analyzed, suggested that prisoners with better nutrition posed a greater threat as potential escapees or saboteurs. In response, German command issued revised instructions to tighten security and reduce unwarranted privileges, accompanied by ration adjustments in subsequent months. Photographs of revised camp layouts show increased fencing and guard towers, a stark visual reminder of the tension between maintaining prisoner productivity and enforcing control. Tactical manuals from 1944 include sections on mitigating risks posed by well-nourished detainees. Yet, despite these countermeasures, the meat rationing continued in some form, concealed behind layers of bureaucracy. Was the enemy's pressure the true catalyst in reshaping camp policies, or merely a pretext? By 1944, the paradox reached a breaking point. As resources dwindled and the front lines collapsed, a crisis unfolded within the camp system. Maps recovered from the archives depict shifting supply routes and contested territories where meat deliveries faltered. Protocols circulated among camp commanders detailed emergency rationing measures, yet records show continued attempts to prioritize prisoners' meat rations in select facilities. The tension between dwindling resources and entrenched practices created fractures within the command hierarchy. A memorandum from a regional supply officer reveals frustration. The meat allocations for prisoners must be reconciled with front demands or risk collapse. This internal conflict, played out on a geopolitical chessboard, shrinking under Allied pressure, raises a chilling question. What was truly at stake in preserving these rations? Was it a misguided strategy, or did it conceal a deeper, unspoken calculus? Each episode is a document I pull from the dust of the archives. Share your own stories. Many of you have relatives who lived through that time, and your words help connect personal memory with archival evidence. Stay curious. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode tomorrow. The aftermath of the crisis revealed fractures not only within the supply lines, but among the officers themselves. Internal correspondence from late 1944 exposes a growing schism. Some officers argued vehemently that maintaining the meat rations for prisoners was a tactical necessity, believing healthier laborers could sustain critical war production, while others condemned it as a grotesque misallocation of scarce resources. A faded, stained memo, its edges burned in a bomb raid, underscores this bitter debate. The stark language accuses senior officers of betraying the front soldiers by feeding captives better than their own men. Amid this discord, whispered rumors circulated of secret stockpiles, hidden meat caches under guard control, shielded from official inventories. Could these allegations be true, or were they merely scapegoating born of desperation? What unseen power structures enabled such contradictions to persist, even as Germany's defeat loomed? Visual evidence deepens the mystery. A recently uncovered aerial reconnaissance photo from late 1944 depicts a camp with an unusual layout. Multiple storage sheds, some marked with faint Fleisch, meat, stencils, clustered near prisoner barracks. Analysts note the proximity as atypical, suggesting rapid distribution rather than long-term storage. Overlaying this image with supply route maps reveals a convoluted network funneling scarce meat supplies through contested territories, routes vulnerable to partisan attacks and Allied air raids. Yet, despite these dangers, shipments continued, protected by armed escorts. The complexity of this operation implies a deliberate prioritization. Why did the German command risk such exposure for prisoner rations? Was it purely economic calculation, or did these shipments serve a covert purpose beyond nourishment? Further complicating the narrative, testimonies extracted post-war from camp staff hint at an undercurrent of complicity and coercion. A camp quartermaster's statement describes pressure from higher authorities to maintain meat allocations at all costs, coupled with veiled threats against those who failed. Meanwhile, prisoner diaries, smuggled out and preserved, speak of paradoxical moments. Guards sharing smuggled meat portions, prisoners trading, favors to secure extra servings, an underground barter economy thriving amidst deprivation. These accounts paint a picture of a system less rigid than official documents suggest, fraught with corruption, negotiation, and human desperation. How did such informal economies alter the reality behind official rationing figures? Did officers turn a blind eye, or were they active participants in this shadow exchange? The psychological toll on German officers was profound. Intercepted radio communications from late 1944 reveal coded conversations expressing disbelief, frustration, and even guilt. One message, partially recovered from a damaged relay, hints at a secret meeting where officers questioned the morality of feeding prisoners better than starving German civilians and soldiers. The tension between duty, ideology, and pragmatism tore at the fabric of command. Visual records from the period, grim portraits of officers with haunted eyes, underscore this internal conflict. Was the shock purely moral, or did it also stem from a fear of losing control over a system they had engineered? Could the revelation of these meat rations have symbolized a deeper unraveling of Nazi authority? Simultaneously, the Allies took note. Intelligence reports from British reconnaissance units reference intercepted German communications discussing special treatment of prisoner laborers. Propaganda leaflets dropped over occupied territories later exploited this contradiction, highlighting the disparity between official German rhetoric and actual conditions. The strategic implications were clear. The image of a ruthless regime was undermined by evidence of preferential treatment, feeding doubts among occupied populations and within resistance movements. How did this information shape Allied strategies? Did it influence efforts to encourage prisoner uprisings or foster dissent within German ranks? The war of narratives ran parallel to the war on the ground, each revelation a weapon in psychological combat. As the war drew to a close, the legacy of these meat rations lingered as a bitter paradox within post-war investigations. Trials and interrogations sought to unravel the tangled web of decisions and motivations behind the provisioning of prisoners. Yet many records were lost or deliberately destroyed, and survivors' testimonies conflicted. A final haunting image emerges: a scorched, abandoned camp kitchen, its empty meat hooks swinging in the cold wind, silent witnesses to a secret that shocked German officers and challenged the very logic of a brutal war machine. What truths remain buried beneath the ruins? And how do these shadows alter our understanding of wartime morality and survival? In the immediate post-war years, investigators sifted through piles of fragmented documents and witness testimonies, seeking clarity on the enigmatic meat rations. Among the recovered files was a partially burned ledger from a regional supply office, listing weekly allocations of meat to several camps, quantities far exceeding what was officially sanctioned. The pages bore smudges of soot and water stains, as if hastily hidden during the final chaotic days of the Third Reich. The ledger's stark figures raised troubling questions. Were these allocations a reflection of localized decisions or part of a broader, covert policy? A faded stamp marking top secret suggested the latter. Yet the true extent of these provisions remained elusive, lost in the fog of war and deliberate destruction. How many officers were complicit in concealing this truth? And what bureaucratic mechanisms allowed such discrepancies to flourish unnoticed? Survivor interviews added a human dimension to these cold statistics. Several former prisoners recounted moments of disbelief when confronted with the meat rations, a rarity in a landscape defined by starvation and neglect. One recalled a fleeting sense of surreal normalcy during mealtimes, contrasted sharply with the brutal conditions outside the barracks. Photographs taken by prisoners themselves, smuggled from camps, show sparse yet vivid glimpses of these meals. Thin slices of cooked meat served alongside meager potatoes, a stark contrast to the usual gruel. These images, grainy but unmistakable, challenge prevailing narratives of uniform deprivation. Yet beneath the surface lurked complex dynamics: favoritism, barter, and survival strategies that blurred the lines between victim and collaborator. How did these uneven distributions influence prisoner hierarchies and resistance? Could better nourishment have been a tool of control as much as survival? Archival radio transcripts from late 1944 reveal a layer of operational secrecy surrounding these rations. Coded messages between camp commandants and higher authorities hinted at special directives to maintain meat supplies amidst shortages, often citing strategic necessity. The transcripts crackle with static, voices tense and clipped, as if aware of the sensitive nature of their orders. One fragmentary message references a Directive 47B, whose details remain obscured, suggesting a classified protocol governing prisoner nutrition. What was the strategic calculus behind this directive? Was it purely utilitarian, to maximize labor output, or did it mask attempts to placate or manipulate prisoners for intelligence or propaganda purposes? The deliberate obfuscation raises unsettling possibilities about hidden agendas within the camp system. The ground, the logistics of sustaining these meat rations under wartime duress reveal a web of clandestine operations. Supply chain maps uncovered from Wehrmacht archives show irregular, often improvised, routes funneling meat from requisitioned farms and slaughterhouses directly to camp zones. These routes bypassed standard military supply networks, relying instead on local intermediaries and guarded convoys. Photographs of supply trucks emblazoned with military insignia but loaded with crates, labeled Fleisch, attest to these secret transports. The risk was immense. Allied air raids, partisan ambushes, and internal theft threatened every shipment. Yet the persistence of these deliveries indicates high-level prioritization. Did this logistical commitment reflect a calculated wartime expedient or a deeper, systemic contradiction within German military doctrine? Could such an operation endure without tacit approval from the highest echelons? As the front lines collapsed in early 1945, confusion and desperation intensified. Camp commanders faced impossible choices, whether to continue meat rations at the risk of attracting enemy attention or to cut supplies and face labor declines. A hand-drawn map from March 1945 details shifting meat distribution points amid chaotic withdrawals, annotated with hastily scrawled notes about urgent reallocation and resource scarcity. Simultaneously, intercepted communications reveal frantic attempts to conceal these practices from Allied intelligence and even from certain German units. This last-ditch effort to preserve the status quo amid disintegrating command and crumbling infrastructure underscores the deep entanglement of these rations in the war's final phase. Why did some officers cling so fiercely to this provision, even as the entire regime unraveled? Was it a vestige of bureaucratic inertia, or a desperate bid to maintain order through controlled privilege? In the decades since, historians continue to debate the implications of this paradox. The meat rations fed into broader questions about complicity, survival, and the moral ambiguity of wartime decisions. Was the shock of German officers upon discovering these allocations merely a reflection of ideological blindness, or did it expose fractures in the Nazi system's self-image? Photographs, documents, and testimonies converge into a fragmented mosaic, revealing a wartime reality far more complex than official records suggest. What remains hidden beneath? Layers of silence and destruction? And how does this unsettling contradiction challenge our understanding of power and humanity amid the horrors of war? In the final analysis, the revelation that German officers were shocked upon learning their prisoners were fed meat 3 times a week punctures the myth of a monolithic, ruthlessly efficient Nazi apparatus. It exposes a system riddled with contradictions, where ideological zeal clashed with pragmatic necessity, and where the lines between oppressor and victim blurred under the weight of survival. The preserved ration lists, the covert supply routes, the furtive conversations, and fragmented images all piece together a narrative not of uniform deprivation, but of uneven privilege and hidden economies within the machinery of war. This paradox challenges the simplistic binaries of good and evil, control and chaos. Yet, the deeper question lingers. How could such a glaring disparity exist without top command fully acknowledging it? Was this shock genuine, or a performative facade to mask internal dissent and maintain morale? The answer may lie buried in the countless destroyed records and the silent testimonies of those who lived it. Officers haunted by the dissonance between orders and reality. Prisoners navigating a landscape where nourishment could become a weapon or a bargaining chip. The meat rations were more than sustenance. They were a symbol of a fractured regime grappling with its own contradictions in the face of impending collapse.